Chapter 1. The Uninvited Guest. Russell Harmon straightened his tie as he pulled into the Bellevue Gardens parking lot. The afternoon sun glinted off the polished hood of his Audi, a car he had specifically purchased for occasions like today, his only daughter's wedding. At 53, Russell carried himself with the quiet confidence of a self-made man. His salt and pepper hair was neatly trimmed, and his custom-tailored suit concealed the physique he maintained through pre-dawn workouts. The invitation had arrived 3 months ago, an embossed card with flowing script that felt cold in his hands. It had been 2 years since the divorce, 2 years since Vanessa had walked out on 26 years of marriage. Russell had built an empire in construction from nothing, working his way up from swinging hammers to running Harmon Development, one of the most respected firms in Pennsylvania. He'd given Vanessa everything she wanted: the mansion in Crestwood Hills, the vacations, the jewelry. But apparently, it wasn't enough. Melissa, their daughter, had always been closer to her mother. After the divorce, their relationship had grown strained, with Melissa seemingly adopting Vanessa's revisionist history of their marriage. It hurt, but Russell refused to beg for his daughter's affection or apologize for imaginary sins. The wedding venue sprawled before him, an elegant converted farmhouse surrounded by manicured gardens. He spotted Vanessa's red Porsche in the VIP section, the car he'd bought her for their 25th anniversary, just months before she left. Russell clenched his jaw and continued inside. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in an hour. Russell had deliberately arrived early, hoping to have a moment with Melissa before she walked down the aisle. He navigated through the venue, following signs to the bridal suite, ignoring the curious glances from staff who clearly wondered who this distinguished-looking man was and why he wasn't part of the pre-wedding photo shoot. A young wedding coordinator intercepted him. "Sir, the ceremony hasn't begun yet. Guests should be arriving through the main entrance." "I'm Melissa Harmon's father," Russell said, his deep voice commanding instant respect. The coordinator's demeanor shifted. "Oh, Mr. Harmon. Aye." She glanced down at her tablet. "Let me check something. One moment, please." Russell watched as she scrolled through whatever information she had, her expression growing increasingly uncomfortable. "Is there a problem?" "No, no problem at all. It's just, I don't see you listed for the pre-ceremony family photos. Those are almost finished now anyway." She smiled nervously. "But I can show you to your seat for the ceremony. I'd like to see my daughter first." "Of course. Just let me check if she's available." The coordinator hurried away, leaving Russell standing alone in the hallway. Through an open door, he caught a glimpse of the reception area being prepared. Staff arranged centerpieces on tables adorned with white linens and gold accents. His eyes were drawn to a large table at the front, clearly the place of honor. A placard reading, "Mrs. Vanessa Harmon," sat prominently displayed. Next to it, another placard for Mr. Dominic Pierce. The name sent a jolt through Russell's system. Dominic Pierce, the man Vanessa had left him for. The business associate who had dined at their home, accepted Russell's hospitality, and then destroyed his marriage. "Mr. Harmon?" The coordinator had returned, looking relieved. "Your daughter can see you for a few minutes. This way, please." She led him to the bridal suite, knocking lightly before opening the door. "Melissa, your father is here." Russell stepped inside to find his daughter in her wedding gown, surrounded by bridesmaids. She looked stunning, the image of her mother at that age, but with Russell's determined chin and steel blue eyes. The room fell silent. The bridesmaids exchanged glances before one of them, who Russell recognized as Melissa's college roommate, said, "We'll give you guys a minute," ushering everyone else out. "Dad," Melissa said, her voice flat. Not the excited greeting of a bride seeing her father on her wedding day. "You're early. I wanted to see you before everything got started," Russell replied, crossing the room to kiss her cheek. She didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. "You look beautiful, Mel." "Thanks." She busied herself with a bracelet, avoiding his eyes. "Mom helped me pick the dress." "I'm sure she did." Russell paused. "I noticed Dominic is sitting at the head table." Melissa's shoulders tensed. "Yes, he's Mom's partner. They've been together for 3 years now." The timeline was like a slap. 3 years. Not 2. Which meant the affair had been going on while they were still married. "I see," Russell said, his voice measured despite the rage building inside him. "And where will I be sitting?" "Dad, please don't make this difficult. Today is supposed to be happy." "I'm not making anything difficult. I just asked a simple question." Melissa sighed, finally meeting his eyes. You're seated for the ceremony near the front, with family. For the reception. She trailed off. For the reception? Russell prompted. Mom thought it would be best if you weren't at the family table. To avoid tension. I'm your father. I know that. Melissa snapped, then immediately softened her tone. I know. But Bradley's parents are traditional, and with the divorce and everything, we just thought it would be simpler this way. Simpler for whom? Russell asked, his voice dropping dangerously low. Their conversation was interrupted by the door opening. Bradley Norton, Melissa's fiancé, stepped in. He was 30, tall and slender, with the polished look of old money, precisely the type Vanessa had always wanted Melissa to marry. Hey, everything okay in here? We need to finish up the photos, Bradley said, barely acknowledging Russell's presence. Everything's fine, Melissa assured him. Dad and I were just catching up. Great. Mr. Harmon, good to see you, Bradley said with the practiced smile of someone who'd been coached to be polite. The ceremony will start soon. The ushers can show you to your seat. Russell nodded, swallowing his anger. I'll let you finish getting ready, Mel. We can talk more at the reception. As he turned to leave, Melissa called after him. Dad? I'm glad you came. Really? Russell managed a smile that didn't reach his eyes and headed out to find his seat for the ceremony. The wedding itself was elegant and impersonal, like a photo spread from a high-end bridal magazine. Russell sat stiffly in the third row, watching as Bradley's father walked Melissa down the aisle. That had been another blow. Melissa had chosen her future father-in-law over Russell, claiming it would make things easier for everyone. Russell had never begged for anything in his life, and he wouldn't start with his own daughter. Throughout the ceremony, he could feel Vanessa's presence 2 rows ahead. She wore a designer dress in pale blue, her blonde hair expertly styled. Beside her sat Dominic Pierce, his arm casually draped around her shoulders. The sight of his hand on her bare skin made Russell's blood boil. When the ceremony concluded, Russell followed the crowd to the reception. A server directed guests to a table where escort cards were arranged alphabetically. Russell found his name and stared at the table number, 17. He looked around, noting that tables 1 through 5 surrounded the dance floor, clearly the premium spots reserved for close family and friends. The server watched him nervously. Can I help you find your table, sir? No, thank you. I'm sure I can manage, Russell replied, slipping the card into his pocket. He made his way through the elegant reception hall, past tables of Melissa's friends and Bradley's business associates, until he reached the far corner of the room. Table 17 was partially obscured by a large floral arrangement and positioned directly behind where the band would be setting up. The table was smaller than the others, with just 6 chairs instead of 10. As Russell stood there, a young woman approached, looking as confused as he felt. Is this table 17? She asked. It is. She checked her escort card again. I'm Amanda, Bradley's second cousin from Arizona. They've really tucked us away, haven't they? Before Russell could respond, 2 more guests arrived, elderly relatives of Bradley's who seemed vaguely offended by their placement. The final 2 chairs were occupied by a college friend of Melissa's who'd recently fallen out of favor and his visibly pregnant girlfriend. It became painfully clear that table 17 was for the obligatory invites, the people who had to be included but whom no one particularly wanted there. From his seat, Russell had a direct view of the head table. Vanessa sat beside Dominic, laughing as he whispered something in her ear. The position of table 17 suddenly seemed less like an oversight and more like a calculated insult. As the band began to set up, blocking what little view he had of the main reception, Russell caught sight of Melissa's place card, carefully positioned at the center of the head table. Beside it was Bradley's, and beyond that, cards for Bradley's parents, Vanessa, Dominic, and various members of the wedding party. Russell Harmon, who had paid for Melissa's education, her first car, and who had transferred a generous sum to her account as a wedding gift despite not being consulted about any of the arrangements, was hidden behind the band. He stood abruptly, startling his table mates. Without a word, he strode across the reception hall toward the head table. Conversations hushed as he passed, sensing the tension in his rigid posture. Melissa was speaking with the wedding planner when she saw him approaching. Her smile faltered. Dad, is everything okay? No, it's not. Russell kept his voice low, but firm. I'd like to know why I'm seated at table 17, behind the band, with people who barely know you. Melissa's eyes darted around, clearly worried about causing a scene. Dad, please. We arranged the seating to minimize conflicts. Conflicts? Russell's eyebrow raised. The only conflict I see is that you've seated your father, who raised you, who paid for your education, who has supported you in everything you've ever done, behind the band while your mother and her partner occupy places of honor. Bradley appeared at Melissa's side, his hand possessively on her waist. Is there a problem here? Yes, Russell said calmly. I'm trying to understand why I've been relegated to the worst table in the room. Bradley exchanged a glance with Melissa before responding. The seating arrangements were carefully planned. Table 17 is for plus ones and extended family. Plus ones, Russell repeated, his voice dropping dangerously. I'm your bride's father, not some random date. At my daughter's wedding, I found my name on a folding chair tucked behind the band, Russell said, barely containing his anger. Do you have any idea how that feels? Bradley straightened his shoulders, trying to match Russell's imposing presence. It's just for plus ones. Russell looked past them to the head table, where Vanessa was watching the exchange with barely concealed satisfaction. I see my ex-wife is enjoying herself at a prime table. Dad, Melissa began, but Russell cut her off. No, I understand perfectly now. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed an envelope, the wedding gift containing a check for $50,000. He placed it on a nearby table. You've made your choice clear. Enjoy your wedding. He turned to leave, his dignity intact despite the humiliation. As he passed the gift table, he picked up the large, expensively wrapped box he had brought, containing the antique silver service Melissa had always admired from his family's collection. Right? Plus one this, he muttered, tucking the gift under his arm and continuing toward the exit. Dad, Melissa's voice called out. Dad, wait. Russell kept walking, aware that conversations had stopped and all eyes were on him. Behind him, he heard Melissa's heels clicking rapidly on the hardwood floor. Dad, please. She ran after him in front of everyone, her white dress billowing behind her. You can't just leave. Russell paused at the doorway, turning to face his daughter one last time. The hurt in her eyes almost made him reconsider. Almost. I can and I will. You made it clear where I stand in your life. Behind the band, with the obligatory invites. His voice was steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. Congratulations on your wedding, Melissa. I wish you all the happiness your mother found. With that, he walked out, ignoring her calls for him to come back. As he placed the gift in his trunk, he saw Dominic comforting Vanessa in the doorway of the venue, her theatrical distress drawing sympathy from onlookers while Melissa stood alone, abandoned by both parents in different ways. Russell drove away, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The humiliation burned, but beneath it, something colder and more dangerous was taking root. For 26 years, he had been the devoted husband, the supportive father, the reliable provider. He had played by the rules, even when Vanessa betrayed him, even when the divorce settlement had been unnecessarily punitive. No more. They had pushed him too far, treated him as an afterthought, a nuisance to be tucked away behind the band. They would learn that Russell Harmon was no one's plus one. Chapter 2. The Man in the Mirror. The morning after Melissa's wedding, Russell woke before dawn in his Lake Michigan vacation home, a property he'd managed to keep in the divorce only because Vanessa hadn't known about it. He'd purchased it through a shell company years ago as an investment, and now it served as his sanctuary. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, Russell hardly recognized himself. His eyes were bloodshot from the whiskey he'd consumed after driving straight through the night. The humiliation of the wedding had morphed into something harder, colder, a determination that settled in his bones. You've been a fool, Russell, he told his reflection, playing fair with people who never intended to do the same. His phone buzzed with another text from Melissa. Dad, please call me. I'm sorry about yesterday. It wasn't supposed to be like that. He ignored it, just as he'd ignored the previous 5 messages and 3 voicemails. Whatever guilt or regret she was feeling now wouldn't undo the calculated insult of the wedding seating. It wasn't a mistake, it was a message, one he'd received loud and clear. After a punishing workout and a cold shower, Russell sat on his deck overlooking the lake, laptop open. 28 years of building his business had given him connections in every industry, a network of people who owed him favors. It was time to call some in. His first call was to Vincent Horvath, a former Army Ranger who now ran a private security and investigation firm. Russell had hired Vince years ago when a rival developer had tried to sabotage one of his projects. Vince had not only solved the problem, but had done so with a ruthless efficiency that Russell had admired. Vince, it's Russell Harmon. Russell, been a while. How's business? Business is fine. I need personal assistance, not professional. A pause. What kind of assistance are we talking about? I need information. On my ex-wife Vanessa and her partner, Dominic Pierce. Thorough information. The kind that doesn't show up in standard background checks. Another pause, longer this time. This about the divorce still? Thought that was settled years ago. It's not about the divorce. It's about consequences. Russell's voice was steady. They've been living in a fairy tale at my expense. Time for reality to set in. You're talking about revenge, Russell. It wasn't a question. I'm talking about justice. Are you in, or should I call someone else? Vince sighed. I'm in, but I want it on record that I advised against this. Revenge is a road that doesn't end where you think it will. Noted. I'll transfer your usual retainer plus 50%. Give me a week. I'll have something for you. After ending the call, Russell opened his laptop again and began his own research. He had spent the 2 years since the divorce focusing on rebuilding his life, deliberately avoiding any information about Vanessa or her new relationship. Now, he immersed himself in it. Social media provided the broad strokes. Vanessa and Dominic had become fixtures in Philadelphia's social scene. Charity galas, art openings, exclusive dinner parties. They were everywhere, living the high life. Dominic had apparently expanded his architectural firm significantly in the past year. The website for Pierce Designs featured glamorous photos of Dominic with celebrities and business magnates, standing in front of gleaming buildings he'd supposedly designed. Russell recognized that particular hustle. He'd seen it countless times in his industry. People who built their reputations on charm and connections rather than actual talent or hard work. Dominic was a social climber who'd found the perfect ladder in Vanessa, with her beauty, social connections, and, most importantly, her divorce settlement from Russell. A new email notification drew Russell's attention. From mharmon@gmail.com subject. Please talk to me. Dad, I know you're upset about the wedding, and you have every right to be. The seating wasn't my idea. Bradley's mother organized everything, and she and Mom made those decisions without me. I should have checked the arrangements. I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry. Please call me. I hate how he left things. Love, Melissa. Russell stared at the email for a long time before closing it without replying. The betrayal ran too deep. Not just the wedding, but everything that had led to it. Melissa had chosen sides long ago, positioning herself firmly in Vanessa's camp, accepting Vanessa's version of events without question. One apologetic email couldn't erase that. His phone rang, an unfamiliar number with a Philadelphia area code. Russell answered cautiously. Russell Harmon. Mr. Harmon, this is Pamela Keller, Vanessa's sister. Russell hadn't spoken to Pamela since the divorce. She'd always been the black sheep of Vanessa's family, too straightforward, too genuine for their carefully curated social image. Pamela, this is unexpected. I heard about what happened at the wedding. Her voice was softer than Russell remembered. It was wrong, what they did to you. You were there? No. Vanessa and I haven't spoken in months. But news travels fast in our circles. She paused. I thought you should know that this vendetta against you wasn't just about the divorce. There's more to it. Russell's grip tightened on the phone. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can we meet somewhere? I'm in Chicago for a conference this weekend. Russell considered this. Pamela had never been particularly close to Vanessa, but they were still sisters. Could this be a trap? Some manipulation orchestrated by Vanessa? Why now, Pamela? Why reach out after all this time? Because I'm tired of watching my sister destroy people's lives without consequences. Her voice hardened. Meet with me or don't, Russell. But I have information you'll want to hear. Russell made a decision. There's a cafe called Harbor Light in Evanston. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I'll be there. After hanging up, Russell stared out at the lake, watching the water churn with an approaching storm. The timing of Pamela's call was suspicious, coming right after the wedding incident. Yet, the raw anger in her voice had seemed genuine. He wouldn't trust her. He wouldn't trust anyone, but he would listen. Information was power, and Russell intended to arm himself thoroughly before striking back. The following afternoon, Russell arrived at Harbor Light 30 minutes early. He chose a corner table with a clear view of both entrances and ordered a black coffee. Pamela arrived exactly on time. At 45, she was 4 years younger than Vanessa but looked a decade older, her face lined with experiences that hadn't been softened by expensive creams or Botox. She spotted Russell immediately and walked over, her sensible heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "You look well, Russell," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "You look tired, Pamela." She smiled wryly. "Always direct. I appreciated that about you." She ordered a tea when the server approached, then waited until they were alone again. "I'm sorry about what happened at the wedding. I didn't come here for sympathy." "No, you came for information." Pamela took a deep breath. Vanessa and Dominic have been planning this humiliation for months. It wasn't just poor seating arrangements. It was deliberate punishment. Russell's face remained impassive. Punishment for what? For not being destroyed by the divorce. For rebuilding your life instead of crumbling. She leaned forward. "Vanessa expected you to fall apart when she left. When you didn't, when your business continued to thrive, she took it as an insult." "That sounds like Vanessa." "It gets worse." Pamela hesitated. Dominic and Vanessa didn't meet 2 years ago. They've known each other for nearly 5 years. The affair started 6 months after they met. Russell did the math. "While we were planning our 25th anniversary celebration." Pamela nodded. "The trip to Italy?" Vanessa was texting him the entire time. The revelation shouldn't have hurt after all this time, but it did. Not because Russell still loved Vanessa. That feeling had died long ago, but because of the sheer audacity of the deception. "How do you know all this?" "Because she bragged about it. To me, to her friends." Pamela's disgust was evident. She portrayed herself as the long-suffering wife who finally found happiness, and you as the neglectful husband who drove her to it. "And you didn't think to tell me this before? Would you have believed me then? Over your wife of 25 years. Pamela shook her head. "Besides, we weren't exactly close." "Why now, Pamela? What's changed?" Pamela's face hardened. 3 months ago, Dominic approached me with a business proposal. He needed investors for a new development project. Said it was going to be revolutionary, could make anyone who got in early a fortune. She laughed bitterly. "I invested $500,000, nearly everything I had from my divorce settlement. Last week, I found out the project doesn't exist. The money's gone, and Dominic's not returning my calls." Russell leaned back, studying her. "So this is about revenge for you two. Call it what you want. I call it justice." She reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. "Everything I have on both of them is here. Financial records, text messages I recovered from Vanessa's old phone that she gave me, a recorded conversation with another investor who was scammed." She placed it on the table. "It won't get my money back, but maybe it can help you." Russell eyed the drive warily. "And what do you want in return?" "Nothing you wouldn't do anyway." Pamela's eyes were cold. "I want them to suffer, Russell. Not just financially, but completely. I want Vanessa to feel what it's like to lose everything. Her status, her security, her smug certainty that she's untouchable." Russell picked up the USB drive, turning it over in his fingers. "That's a dangerous request, Pamela. You built yourself up from nothing once. You survived what they did to you. I'm not sure I have that same strength." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I'm just asking you to be the Russell Harmon I remember. The man who never backed down from a fight, who never let anyone take what was his without consequences." Russell pocketed the drive, his decision made. "I'll look into this. I can't promise anything beyond that." Pamela nodded, satisfied. "That's all I'm asking." She stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Bradley, Melissa's new husband? He's involved too. Not just as Dominic's friend, but as a business partner. Whatever they're doing, he's part of it." The revelation hit Russell like a physical blow. Not just his ex-wife and her lover, but his new son-in-law, and by extension, Melissa herself, were aligned against him. "Thank you for telling me," Russell said, his voice betraying nothing of the rage building inside him. After Pamela left, Russell remained at the cafe, thoughts churning. If what she'd said was true, and he'd verify every word before acting, then the conspiracy against him ran deeper than he'd imagined. The question was no longer whether to strike back, but how comprehensively to destroy those who had betrayed him. That night, back at his lake house, Russell opened his laptop and inserted Pamela's USB drive. Hours ticked by as he methodically went through everything: financial statements, text messages, emails, photos. By dawn, two things were clear. Pamela had been telling the truth, and Russell now possessed enough information to ruin Vanessa, Dominic, and Bradley 10 times over. But simple ruin wasn't enough. Not for what they'd done. Standing before the mirror again, Russell made a vow to himself. They want to treat me as an afterthought? Fine. I'll become their worst nightmare instead. Chapter 3. The First Move. 7 days after Melissa's wedding, Russell sat in Vincent Horvath's sparsely furnished office in downtown Chicago. The walls were bare except for a framed Marine Corps flag and a black and white photograph of a military unit in Afghanistan. No family photos, no diplomas or certificates. Nothing that would give visitors insight into the man behind the desk. Vincent slid a thick folder across to Russell. Everything you asked for, plus some things you didn't know to ask for. Russell opened the folder, skimming the first few pages. You've been thorough. Always am. Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying Russell with narrowed eyes. Found some interesting connections. Your ex-wife's new boyfriend? His architectural firm is mostly smoke and mirrors. He's designed maybe 3 buildings himself. The rest are either associate work he's taking credit for or outright purchased from struggling architects who needed quick cash. Not surprising, Russell murmured, continuing to read. The real story is what they've been doing with investor money. Vincent pointed to a section in the report. Dominic Pierce has raised nearly $8 million for a development called the Enclave in the past year. High-end residential community, supposedly revolutionary design, exclusive membership model. Except there's no land purchased, no permits filed, no architectural plans registered with the city. Russell looked up. A Ponzi scheme? More sophisticated than that. They've created enough legal entities and paper trails to make it look legitimate. They even have a model unit, rented, not built, that they show to potential investors. But the money isn't going into development. It's going into offshore accounts, luxury purchases, and keeping earlier investors quiet with dividend payments. And my daughter's new husband is involved. Vincent nodded grimly. Bradley Norton is the face they present to old money investors. His family name opens doors. He's listed as the financial director of the project. Russell absorbed this, his face betraying nothing. What about Melissa? Is she involved? No direct involvement that I could find. But, Vincent hesitated. But what? She has to know something isn't right. She's living in a $3.2 million condo that was purchased with investor funds. The deed is in Pierce's company name, but Melissa and Bradley live there rent-free. Russell closed the folder. Any chance this is all legitimate? A development that's just moving slowly? Vincent shook his head. I paid a visit to their offices pretending to be an interested investor. They're already selling units in a building that doesn't have architectural plans finalized, let alone permits. That's not just unethical. It's illegal. And Vanessa's role in all this? Social connector. She brings in the wealthy divorcees, the society types looking to diversify their portfolios. Her cut is 20% of whatever she brings in. Vincent's voice hardened. She's been using your name too, implying that you're secretly backing the project to lend credibility. That last detail made Russell's blood boil. Using his reputation, built over decades of honest work, to lure people into a scam, it was beyond insulting. What's your plan, Russell? Vincent asked after a long silence. I'm still formulating it. Russell fixed Vincent with a steady gaze. If I asked you to do something that skirts the edge of legality, nothing violent, nothing that would hurt innocent people, would you help me? Vincent didn't answer immediately. Depends on the specifics. I've bent rules before, but I don't break them. Fair enough. Russell stood, tucking the folder under his arm. I'll be in touch within the week with details. In the meantime, keep monitoring their activities. I want to know everyone involved, every dollar moved, every promise made. You're not thinking of going to the authorities with this? Vincent asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. The legal system would give them a slap on the wrist, maybe some probation. After what they've done. No. Russell's voice was cold. They wanted to play games with people's lives. Now they'll learn what happens when you choose the wrong opponent. As Russell left Vincent's office, his phone buzzed with another text from Melissa, the 20th since the wedding. Dad, Bradley and I are coming to Chicago next weekend for a charity event. Please meet with us. I need to explain about the wedding. I miss you. For the first time, Russell replied. I'll be at Gibson Steakhouse, Saturday, 7 p.m. Come alone. Her response was immediate. Thank you, Dad. I'll be there. Russell pocketed his phone, a grim smile playing at his lips. Let Melissa think this was about reconciliation. In reality, it was the opening move in a game she didn't even know she was playing. The week passed with Russell working methodically, setting up the pieces of his plan. He established a new shell company, transferred significant funds from his offshore accounts, and arranged a series of meetings with people who owed him favors, people with specialized skills and a talent for discretion. Saturday evening found him at Gibson's Steakhouse, seated at a corner table with a perfect view of the entrance. He was halfway through his whiskey when Melissa walked in, alone as instructed. She spotted him immediately, nervously smoothing her dress before approaching. Dad, she said, her voice tentative. Thank you for meeting me. Russell stood, giving her a brief, formal hug before gesturing for her to sit. You wanted to talk. I'm listening. Melissa looked thinner than she had at the wedding, with dark circles under her eyes partially concealed by makeup. I wanted to apologize for what happened at the wedding. The seating arrangement was unacceptable. I should have checked it myself. Yes, you should have. Russell's voice was even. But that's not really why we're here, is it? Confusion flickered across Melissa's face. What do you mean? I want to make things right between us. Do you? Russell took another sip of his whiskey. Tell me about the enclave, Melissa. The color drained from her face. How do you know about that? I know many things, including the fact that you and Bradley are living in a condo purchased with investor funds for a development that doesn't exist. That's not true, Melissa protested, but her voice lacked conviction. The development is real. It's just proceeding slower than expected. Don't lie to me. Russell's voice had an edge that made Melissa flinch. I've seen the financial records. I know there are no permits, no land purchases, nothing but a fancy website and a rented model unit. I know your mother is recruiting investors by dropping my name. And I know your husband is the financial director of this elaborate fraud. Melissa's hands trembled as she reached for the water glass. It's not like that. Dominic has the vision. Bradley believes in him. The investors understand there are risks. The investors believe they're putting money into actual real estate, not funding your mother's shopping sprees and Dominic's gambling habit. Russell leaned forward. You're smarter than this, Melissa. You have a business degree. You must know what they're doing is illegal. Tears welled in Melissa's eyes. What was I supposed to do? Bradley and Mom and Dominic. They're all so convinced it's going to work out. They say once they get enough initial investment, they'll actually build it. And until then, what happens to the people losing their savings? No one's going to lose anything, Melissa insisted. Dominic says. Dominic is a fraud. Russell cut her off. And now you are too. The accusation hung between them. Melissa stared at her father, tears streaming down her face. Why are you doing this? Is this punishment for the wedding seating? Russell laughed, a sound devoid of humor. You think this is about a chair? This is about integrity, Melissa. Something I thought I'd taught you. What are you going to do? Fear crept into her voice. That depends on you. Russell's expression softened slightly. I'm offering you one chance. One, to extricate yourself from this mess before it all comes crashing down. What do you mean? Leave Bradley. Renounce any connection to the enclave. Return to Philadelphia. Move back into your old apartment and get a legitimate job. The terms were delivered like a business proposal, clean and non-negotiable. Melissa gaped at him. Leave my husband? We just got married. Your husband is a criminal who's going to end up in prison. Russell's voice was implacable. The only question is whether you'll be joining him there. You wouldn't turn us in. We're family. Family. Russell's laugh was bitter. Was I family when you seated me behind the band? Was I family when you let your mother spread lies about me for years? Was I family when you chose to live in a home purchased with stolen money? Melissa wiped at her tears angrily. So that's it. An ultimatum? Leave my husband or else. Not or else. Simply a statement of fact. This scheme is coming down, Melissa. The only question is whether you'll be caught in the collapse. You're going to report them, she realized, horror dawning on her face. No. Russell shook his head. That would be too quick, too clean. What I have planned is much more comprehensive. For the first time, Melissa looked truly afraid. Not just for herself, but of the man sitting across from her. A man she suddenly realized she didn't know as well as she thought. Dad, please. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. For my sake, if nothing else. You forfeited any right to ask favors of me the moment you chose to benefit from their crimes. Russell signaled for the check. You have 1 week to decide. After that, events will be set in motion that can't be stopped. This isn't you, Melissa whispered. You've never been vindictive like this. Russell fixed her with a cold stare. You have no idea what I'm capable of, Melissa. Your mother made the same mistake. He stood, placing cash on the table. 1 week. Choose wisely. As he walked away, Russell heard Melissa's quiet sobs behind him. Part of him, a small, distant part, ached at causing his daughter pain. But that part was overshadowed by the cold determination that had taken root since the wedding. Melissa had made her choice long ago, choosing Vanessa's illusions over his reality. Now she would face the consequences of that choice, along with everyone else who had betrayed him. Outside the restaurant, Russell made a call. Vincent, it's time. Proceed with Phase 1. The plan was in motion. No turning back now. Chapter 4. The Invisible Hand. 3 days after his dinner with Melissa, Russell stood in the office of Theodore Maxwell, one of Philadelphia's most respected real estate attorneys and a longtime associate. The walls were adorned with framed newspaper articles chronicling landmark deals Theodore had facilitated over his 40-year career. You understand what I'm asking? Russell said, after outlining his proposal. Theodore removed his glasses, polishing them thoughtfully. In essence, you want to secretly finance a competing development directly adjacent to the proposed site of the enclave, secure all necessary permits in record time, and begin construction before Pierce even breaks ground. Exactly, all while keeping your involvement completely hidden. That's right. Theodore replaced his glasses. The land acquisition is straightforward enough. The expedited permits are challenging, but doable with the right incentives. All legal, of course. He frowned. But the timeline you're proposing is nearly impossible, and the cost would be astronomical. Russell smiled thinly. I'm prepared to pay a premium for speed, whatever it costs. May I ask why? This isn't your usual investment strategy. Let's just say I have a personal interest in seeing the Enclave project fail. Theodore studied Russell's face. They'd known each other for 20 years, collaborated on dozens of projects. He'd handled Russell's divorce with professional detachment, never commenting on the personal aspect. This is about Vanessa and her new partner. It wasn't a question. Among other things. Theodore sighed heavily. Russell, I value our relationship, both professional and personal. That's why I have to advise against this course of action. Revenge rarely brings the satisfaction people hope for. This isn't just revenge, Theodore. It's justice. Russell's voice hardened. Pierce and his associates are running a sophisticated investment scam. They're taking people's money with no intention of building anything. I'm simply ensuring they face consequences. If that's true, why not go to the authorities? Because the legal system would give them a slap on the wrist. They'd serve minimal time in a low-security prison, if any. Meanwhile, their victims would never see their money again. Russell leaned forward. My way, the investors get warning before they lose everything. Pierce and his partners get the public humiliation they deserve, and I get the satisfaction of watching it happen. Theodore considered this. And your daughter? How does she factor into this plan? I've given Melissa the opportunity to distance herself from the situation. Whether she takes it is her choice. I see. Theodore tapped his pen against the desk, thinking, I'll help with the land acquisition and permits. That's standard business. But the rest of it, the deliberate sabotage of a competing project, regardless of how fraudulent it might be, that's where I draw the line. Fair enough, Russell agreed. I wouldn't want to compromise your ethics. The rest I can handle through other channels. Theodore nodded, relieved. I'll have contracts drawn up by tomorrow for the land purchase through your shell company. The parcel adjacent to the Enclave's proposed location is actually owned by a client who's been looking to sell. We might be able to offer slightly below market value and still get a quick closing. Perfect. Russell stood to leave. One more thing, Theodore. Complete confidentiality on this matter. No one can know I'm involved. Of course. Theodore walked him to the door. Russell, he hesitated. Whatever you're planning beyond the land purchase, be careful. Vanessa can be vindictive when cornered. Russell's smile didn't reach his eyes. So can I, Theodore. That's what they're about to learn. The next phase of Russell's plan required more specialized assistance. From his hotel suite in Philadelphia, he placed a call to Sophia Reyes, a former employee who now ran a boutique public relations firm specializing in crisis management. Russell Harmon, Sophia answered, surprise evident in her voice. What crisis brings you to my door? Not my crisis. One I'm planning to create for someone else. A pause. That's not typically how my services work. I'll pay triple your usual rate. Another pause, longer this time. I'm listening. Russell outlined what he needed. A media campaign ready to launch at a moment's notice, exposing the Enclave scheme while keeping his involvement hidden. I want it thoroughly researched, completely factual, and devastating enough that no one associated with the project can show their face in Philadelphia society again. You're talking about destroying people, Russell. Not just professionally, but personally. They made their choice when they decided to defraud investors. Sophia sighed. Send me what you have. I'll review it and let you know if I'm willing to take this on. No promises. Fair enough, Russell agreed. But Sophia? Time is of the essence. After ending the call, Russell checked his messages. Nothing from Melissa since their dinner. Not surprising, but disappointing nonetheless. He'd meant what he said about giving her a chance to walk away, to save herself from the coming storm. Part of him still hoped she would take it. A new email arrived from Vincent. Found something you need to see immediately. Too sensitive for email. Call me secure line. Russell dialed the encrypted phone Vincent had provided. What do you have? He asked without preamble. They're accelerating their timeline, Vincent said. Pierce just announced to current investors that construction will begin in 30 days. They're holding a groundbreaking ceremony. Invited the mayor, local press, everything. They don't have permits. They don't even own the land yet. Exactly. It's a desperate move to bring in more investors before the whole thing collapses. Vanessa's been making calls to everyone in her social circle, promising exclusive access if they invest now. Russell processed this. They're panicking. Did something spook them? Possibly. Bradley Norton made 3 calls to a private investigator yesterday, someone who specializes in corporate security. Could be they suspect someone's looking into them. Melissa, Russell murmured. What's that? Nothing. Just thinking aloud. Russell made a quick decision. We need to move faster. How quickly can you put together a dossier on everyone who's invested in the Enclave so far? Already working on it. Should have it complete by tomorrow evening. Good. And the surveillance on Pierce's office. In place. We're capturing everything. Emails, phone calls, visitor logs. Keep at it. Russell ended the call and immediately dialed Theodore. I need the land deal closed within 48 hours, he said when Theodore answered. Whatever it costs. 48 hours. Theodore sounded shocked. Russell, that's practically impossible. Nothing's impossible with enough money. Offer 20% above asking price. All cash, no contingencies. Get it done, Theodore. I'll try, but even with an aggressive offer, the paperwork alone. Get creative. Use your connections. I need control of that land before Pierce announces his groundbreaking ceremony. After hanging up, Russell stared out at the Philadelphia skyline, a city he'd helped shape with his developments over the decades. Now he was preparing to reshape the lives of those who had betrayed him, to demonstrate that actions had consequences, especially when those actions targeted Russell Harmon. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meeting confirmed. The man will see you tonight, 10 p.m. Location to be sent 1 hour before. Come alone. Payment as discussed. Russell texted back a simple acknowledgement. This meeting was perhaps the most important piece of his plan and the riskiest. The kind of help he needed now went beyond what legitimate businesses could provide. That night, Russell found himself in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The location, sent precisely 1 hour before the meeting as promised, had required him to dismiss his driver and take a taxi to ensure he wasn't followed. The warehouse was dimly lit, with only a few strategic lights illuminating a path to a makeshift office constructed of shipping containers in the center of the cavernous space. A man stood waiting, his face in shadow. Not the person Russell had expected to meet. Mr. Harmon, the man said, his voice carrying a slight Eastern European accent. You wish to speak with Mr. Antonoff? Yes. Mr. Antonoff does not meet with people he does not know. I am authorized to hear your proposal. Russell hadn't built his empire by being easily intimidated. I was told I would speak with Antonoff directly. I brought the fee he requested. He held up a briefcase. The man stepped forward, now partially illuminated. He was younger than Russell had expected, perhaps mid-30s, with close-cropped hair and the hard eyes of someone who had seen too much violence. The fee gets you this meeting. With me. What you want determines if you meet Mr. Antonoff. Russell decided to be direct. I need information extracted from secure servers, and I need certain electronic records altered. Nothing that will crash systems or cause widespread damage. Targeted changes to specific files. You're talking about corporate espionage and fraud, the man said flatly. I'm talking about exposing fraud that's already being committed, Russell countered. The targets are running an investment scam. I want to accelerate its collapse on my timeline, not theirs. The man studied Russell for a long moment. Why come to us? There are plenty of hackers who would do this for less money and ask fewer questions. Because I need the best. And because I need absolute certainty that it can't be traced back to me. A thin smile crossed the man's face. Now you're speaking our language. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Tell me exactly what you need. For the next hour, Russell outlined the digital aspects of his plan. The files he needed accessed, the records that needed modification, the emails that needed to be discovered by investors at precisely the right moment. When he finished, the man nodded thoughtfully. It can be done. For twice the fee we originally discussed. The work is worth twice what we discussed. No, but your identity is worth that much to us. The man's smile widened at Russell's surprise. Yes, we know exactly who you are, Mr. Harmon. Your reputation precedes you. The businessman who built an empire from nothing, who always works within the law. Until now, Russell maintained his composure. Exceptional circumstances call for exceptional measures. Indeed. The man stood. Half the payment now, half when the work is complete. Mr. Antonoff will oversee this personally. Consider that a compliment. Few jobs interest him directly these days. Russell handed over the briefcase. When can I expect results? You'll see the first signs within 72 hours. The full implementation will take 10 days. The man handed Russell a small metal device that looked like a USB drive. If you need to contact us, plug this into any computer and open a blank document. Type your message and then destroy the device. We'll find you. As Russell left the warehouse, he felt an odd mixture of satisfaction and unease. He'd crossed a line tonight, venturing into territory he'd carefully avoided throughout his career. Yet the prospect of finally bringing justice to those who had wronged him outweighed any moral qualms. Back in his hotel suite, Russell poured himself a whiskey and opened his laptop. A new email from Melissa waited in his inbox. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said. I asked Bradley about the Enclave financials, and he got angry, angrier than I've ever seen him. He accused me of not trusting him, of undermining the family business. I don't know what to believe anymore. Bradley swears everything is legitimate, just behind schedule. But the way Mom and Dominic changed the subject when I asked specific questions about permits and construction timelines. I need more time to figure this out. Please don't do anything drastic yet. Melissa. Russell read the email twice before responding. Melissa, you don't have more time. None of you do. Events are already in motion. You still have 4 days to make your choice. Use them wisely. Dad. He sent the email, then opened the dossier Vincent had compiled on the Enclave investors. As he scrolled through the list of names and investment amounts, Russell recognized many former friends, business associates, even a few relatives of Vanessa's. People who trusted her, who believed in the exclusive opportunity she was offering them. People who would soon discover just how costly that trust would be. Russell closed the laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Philadelphia had been his home for decades. The place where he'd built his fortune, raised his family, established his reputation. After this, he might never be welcome here again, not once people realized what he'd done. A price he was willing to pay. Chapter 5, The Spider's Web. The exclusive brunch at the Philadelphia Country Club was in full swing when Russell arrived. He hadn't been invited, of course. The event was hosted by Vanessa and Dominic to woo potential investors for the Enclave, a select group of visionaries, as the embossed invitation Vincent had intercepted phrased it. Russell's appearance caused an immediate stir. Conversations halted mid-sentence as heads turned toward the doorway. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his silver hair immaculately styled, projecting the image of success and confidence that had made him a fixture in Philadelphia business circles for decades. Across the room, Vanessa nearly dropped her champagne flute. She recovered quickly, whispering urgently to Dominic, who turned with a frown that morphed into a forced smile as Russell approached. Russell, Dominic extended his hand. This is unexpected. Russell ignored the outstretched hand. Dominic. Vanessa. His tone was cordial but cool. Quite the gathering you've assembled. Vanessa found her voice. This is a private event, Russell. By invitation only. Yes, I gathered that from the invitations you've been sending out. Russell smiled thinly. Invitations that mention my name as a silent partner in this venture. Color drained from Vanessa's face. I don't know what you're talking about. No. Russell turned to address a nearby group of guests, mostly wealthy retirees whom Russell recognized from Vanessa's social circle. Has anyone here been told that I'm backing the Enclave project? That my company is providing the construction expertise? A distinguished-looking man in his 60s spoke up. That's what we were told. That you and Dominic had formed a partnership, with you handling the construction side while he manages the design. Fascinating. Russell's smile didn't reach his eyes. Considering Dominic and I have never discussed any such arrangement. Murmurs swept through the room. Dominic stepped forward, attempting damage control. There seems to be a misunderstanding. We never claimed direct involvement from Russell, merely that the project benefits from relationships with established developers like Harmon Construction. A convenient clarification, now that I'm here. Russell locked eyes with Dominic. Tell me, when exactly did you secure the permits for this project? And what's the status of the environmental impact study for the site? I'd be interested to review the documentation. Dominic's confident facade cracked slightly. Those details are proprietary, available to confirmed investors only. Of course. Russell nodded as if this made perfect sense. And the groundbreaking ceremony next week? That seems ambitious for a project still finalizing permits. Another ripple of concerned whispers spread through the crowd. An older woman clutching pearls at her neck spoke up. Mr. Pierce assured us permits were already secured. That's why we increased our investment last month. Did he? Russell raised an eyebrow. How interesting. Dominic placed a hand on Russell's shoulder, his knuckles white with tension. Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately, Russell. No need to bore everyone with technical details. Russell removed Dominic's hand from his shoulder with 2 fingers, as if disposing of something distasteful. No need at all. I've said what I came to say. He turned to address the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I recommend you verify the status of the Enclave project independently before investing further. My firm has no connection whatsoever with this development. As he turned to leave, Vanessa grabbed his arm. What the hell do you think you're doing? She hissed. Russell looked down at her manicured hand, then back to her face. Warning people about a fraud. Consider it a public service. You bastard, she whispered. This is about the wedding, isn't it? About your precious ego being bruised because Melissa chose us over you. This is about consequences, Vanessa. Something you've managed to avoid for too long. Russell's voice was quiet, but carried an undercurrent of steel. Enjoy the rest of your brunch. I suspect it may be the last one you host for quite some time. He left the country club with Vanessa's furious gaze boring into his back. Phase 2 of his plan was now in motion, sowing doubt among the investors while maintaining plausible deniability about his true intentions. By the time Russell reached his car, his phone was already buzzing with messages. The first was from Theodore. Land deal closed. Property is yours. Paperwork filed to establish Horizon Development LLC as the official owner. No connection to you visible in any public records. The second message was from Sophia. Media package ready. Waiting for your green light. The third was from Vincent. Pierce making panic calls to all major investors. Damage control mode activated. The fourth was from Melissa. What have you done? Bradley just left the house in a rage after getting calls from 3 different investors. He says you're trying to destroy him. Russell smiled as he typed his response to Melissa. Not trying. Succeeding. 4 days left on your decision, Melissa. Choose wisely. His next call was to the mysterious contact from the warehouse, the intermediary for the hacker known only as Antonoff. The phone rang 3 times before connecting to silence. It's Harmon, Russell said. Time to accelerate the timeline. I need those emails released tomorrow, not next week. That wasn't the agreement, the voice replied. I'll pay an additional 50% for the expedited service. A pause. Done. Expect results by noon tomorrow. Russell's final call was to a number he rarely used, the direct line to Lawrence Davidson, editor-in-chief of the Philadelphia Business Journal, and a man who owed his career to Russell's discreet backing years ago. Lawrence, Russell said when the man answered. I have a story you might be interested in. Front page material. Russell Harmon. Lawrence replied, surprise evident in his voice. It's been years. What kind of story are we talking about? Investment fraud. Major players in the Philadelphia social scene. Documentation to back up every claim. Sounds promising. Who's the source? Anonymous, as far as your readers are concerned. But the information will come from me, and it will be impeccable. Lawrence hesitated. We need to verify independently. Run it past our legal team. Of course. I wouldn't expect anything less. Russell's voice was smooth. The first documents will arrive tomorrow. Have your best reporter ready. After ending the call, Russell leaned back in the leather seat of his car, satisfaction settling over him like a warm cloak. The trap was set. Now it was only a matter of time before it snapped shut. The following day, Russell watched the chaos unfold from his hotel suite. By 10 a.m., Vincent reported that Dominic's office was in turmoil. Internal emails detailing the fraudulent nature of the enclave had somehow been leaked to every major investor. By noon, the phone lines at Pierce Design were jammed with calls from panicked investors demanding explanations and refunds. By 2 p.m., Lawrence had called to confirm that the Business Journal was running the story in tomorrow's edition, with a teaser going live on their website by end of day. Their legal team had vetted the documents and found them legitimate. By 4 p.m., Bradley and Dominic had called an emergency investor meeting at their downtown office. Vincent, posing as security personnel, was inside, providing real-time updates to Russell. They're promising it's all a misunderstanding, Vincent texted, claiming the emails were taken out of context or potentially fabricated. No one's buying it. 2 investors just stormed out, threatening lawsuits. Russell forwarded this information to Sophia, who had positioned concerned citizens outside the building with signs protesting investment fraud. She'd also tipped off local news stations about the gathering protest, ensuring cameras would be present when investors began leaving the meeting. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The only variable Russell couldn't control was Melissa. She had sent increasingly desperate texts throughout the day. The investors are withdrawing en masse. Bradley says we're ruined. Dominic says someone hacked their emails. Was that you? Please call me. I don't know what to do. Russell left all of them unanswered. Melissa's time to choose was running out, and his silence was deliberate, forcing her to make her decision without his guidance, to stand on her own for perhaps the first time in her life. That evening, as Russell watched the local news coverage of the Enclave investment scandal, his hotel room door was suddenly pounded with frantic knocks. Dad, I know you're in there. Open the door. Melissa's voice was ragged with emotion. Russell considered ignoring her, but something, perhaps the last remnant of paternal instinct, made him open the door. Melissa burst in, her face tear-streaked, hair disheveled. Stop this. Please, just stop. You've made your point. Russell closed the door calmly. Have I? What point do you think I've made? That you can destroy us if you want to. She collapsed onto the sofa, hands shaking. Bradley's talking about bankruptcy. Mom's getting calls from everyone in her social circle asking if she knew it was a scam. Dominic is. She trailed off. Dominic is what? Russell pressed. Gone, Melissa whispered. He emptied the joint accounts this morning and disappeared. Mom's hysterical, saying he must have been kidnapped or something. But she looked up at Russell. He ran, didn't he? He took the money and ran. Of course he did. Russell sat across from her. Men like Dominic always save themselves first. The question is, why are you still here? Why didn't you and Bradley leave with him? Because this is our home. Melissa cried. Because everything we have is here. Because. She hesitated. Because Dominic didn't invite you along, Russell finished for her. He took the money and left all of you to face the consequences. Melissa's silence confirmed his words. Russell studied his daughter, the child he'd once adored, now a stranger shaped by Vanessa's influence and her own poor choices. Have you made your decision, Melissa? The 4 days aren't up yet, but events are moving quickly now. She wiped at her tears, visibly collecting herself. What exactly are you offering? If I leave Bradley, renounce any connection to the Enclave. What then? What do I get? Protection, Russell said simply. Financial support until you find legitimate work. A chance to rebuild your life away from the fallout that's coming. And if I refuse? If I stay with Bradley? Russell's expression hardened. Then you face the same consequences he does. All of them. That's cruel. No, Melissa. Cruel was seating your father behind the band at your wedding. Cruel was participating in a scheme that defrauded innocent people of their savings. Cruel was choosing your mother's lies over the truth. Russell's voice remained calm, but his eyes were cold. I'm offering you a lifeline most people in your position wouldn't get. Take it or don't. The choice is yours. Melissa stood on shaky legs. I need to think. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, phase 3 begins, and there will be no more chances. Russell opened the door for her. Choose wisely, Melissa. For once in your life, choose wisely. After she left, Russell returned to monitoring the situation. Vincent reported that investors were organizing a class action lawsuit against Pierce Design and all associated parties, including Bradley Norton, financial director. The FBI had been contacted by at least 2 of the larger investors, raising the possibility of federal fraud charges. Everything was falling apart for them, exactly as Russell had planned. And tomorrow would bring the final blow, the revelation that would shatter whatever remained of their reputation and freedom. As midnight approached, Russell received an unexpected call from Pamela Keller. You've been busy, she said when he answered. I don't know what you mean. Please. Her laugh was bitter. Vanessa called me in tears, begging for money to tide her over until she can sort out this misunderstanding with her investors. As if I have any money left after what Dominic did to me. What did you tell her? To go to hell. Pamela's voice hardened. But I'm calling about Melissa. She reached out to me too, asking if she could stay with me for a while. Said she was leaving Bradley. Russell sat straighter. What did you tell her? That my guest room is available if she needs it. That sometimes the hardest choices are the only ones that let us live with ourselves afterward. Pamela paused. She's your daughter, Russell. Whatever Vanessa's influence, whatever mistakes she's made, she's still your daughter. I know what she is, Russell replied, his voice neutral. Did she say when she's leaving Bradley? Tonight. She's packing now, while he's at some emergency meeting with lawyers. Another pause. Whatever you're planning next, Russell, whatever phase 3 is, remember that Melissa is making the choice you gave her. That should count for something. After Pamela hung up, Russell stared out at the Philadelphia skyline, thoughts churning. Melissa was choosing to save herself. It was something, yes. But was it enough to earn forgiveness after years of betrayal? He'd decide tomorrow. For now, the plan continued. Chapter 6. The Fall. The Philadelphia Business Journal hit newsstands at 6 a.m. with the headline, Exclusive. The Enclave Exposed. Prominent architect and socialite couple behind massive investment fraud. A photograph of Dominic Pierce and Vanessa Harmon at a charity gala filled half the front page. By 7 a.m., local television stations were running the story on their morning news programs, reporters stationed outside the empty offices of Pierce Design. By 8 a.m., the FBI had executed search warrants at the Pierce Design offices, Dominic and Vanessa's home, and Bradley Norton's residence. By 9 a.m., Vanessa's lawyer was making desperate calls to Russell, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Russell, it's Martin Greenberg. Vanessa is being questioned by the FBI. She swears she knew nothing about any fraud. Please call me back. I know you had something to do with this breaking now. Russell, for God's sake, they're talking about pressing federal charges. Whatever your grievances with Vanessa, this is extreme. Call me. They're taking her into custody, Russell. Actual handcuffs. Is this what you wanted? To see the mother of your child in prison? Call me back, damn it. Russell ignored them all. Instead, he placed a call to Theodore. I need you to file the permits for Horizon Development today. The complete package, architectural plans, environmental impact study, everything. I want construction to begin within 2 weeks. Theodore sounded bewildered. 2 weeks. Russell, even with expedited processing, that's. I've made arrangements with the Planning Commission. The permits will be approved. Just make sure our paperwork is impeccable. What exactly are you building there? The plans you sent over are for luxury condominiums, similar to what the Enclave was proposing. Not similar, Russell corrected. Identical. Down to the last detail. I don't understand. You don't need to. Just file the permits. Russell's next call was to Vincent, who reported that Bradley Norton had been taken in for questioning but released on his own recognizance, likely cutting a deal to testify against Dominic and Vanessa in exchange for leniency. Smart move, Russell commented. What about Melissa? Any sign of her? She left their condo last night with 2 suitcases. Took a taxi to the train station. Philadelphia to New York line? Yes. How did you know? Pamela lives in New York. Russell felt an unexpected flicker of relief. Melissa had made her choice, the right one. Any word on Dominic's whereabouts? Nothing confirmed, but there's chatter about someone matching his description boarding a private plane to the Cayman Islands yesterday afternoon. Used a passport under a different name. He won't get far, Russell said with certainty. Make the call to Interpol. Use the contact I gave you. By noon, Russell was seated in the office of District Attorney Eleanor Hayes, a formidable woman in her 50s with a reputation for incorruptibility and relentless prosecution of white-collar crime. Mr. Harmon, she said, gesturing for him to sit. I appreciate you coming in voluntarily to discuss the Enclave situation. Happy to help in any way I can, Russell replied smoothly. Though I'm not sure what insight I can offer, given that I had no involvement with the project. That's precisely what interests me. Hayes studied him with shrewd eyes. Your ex-wife and her partner were using your name to lend credibility to their scheme. Yet you never publicly refuted this until yesterday at the country club. Why the delay? I wasn't aware they were using my name until recently. When I found out, I took immediate action to set the record straight. Hayes clearly didn't entirely believe him. And the timing of the email leak, the newspaper expose, and your public confrontation, all within 48 hours. That's just coincidence. Russell met her gaze evenly. I can't speak to the emails or the newspaper. My only action was to attend that brunch and clarify that I had no connection to the project. A clarification that triggered the collapse of their entire operation. If the truth caused their house of cards to fall, that's hardly my responsibility. Hayes leaned back in her chair. Several investors have mentioned that you warned them privately about the Enclave weeks ago. Suggested they investigate before investing further. I may have expressed concerns to friends when they mentioned the project, Russell acknowledged. That's hardly unusual in business circles. No, it's not. Hayes tapped her pen against her notepad. What is unusual is the precise, coordinated way this fraud was exposed. Almost as if someone orchestrated it for maximum impact. Someone with a grudge against Pierce and my ex-wife, you mean? Russell raised an eyebrow. I'm sure I'm not the only person they've wronged over the years. No, but you're certainly the one with the most resources and motivation. Hayes studied him for a long moment. I can't prove you orchestrated this, Mr. Harmon. Even if I could, exposing a legitimate fraud isn't illegal, regardless of your methods. Then why am I here? Because I want to understand what comes next. Hayes leaned forward. Vanessa Harmon is in custody. Dominic Pierce is a fugitive with an Interpol notice now attached to his passport. Bradley Norton is cooperating with authorities. The Enclave investors will likely recover only pennies on the dollar, despite our best efforts. A regrettable situation for all involved, Russell said neutrally. Indeed. And now, coincidentally, a new development called Horizon Heights is being fast-tracked for construction on the very site where the Enclave was supposed to be built. A development suspiciously similar to what Pierce was promising his investors. Russell smiled thinly. The free market at work. One project fails, another rises to take its place. With you as the hidden beneficiary, I suspect. Hayes closed her notepad. I can't touch you legally, Mr. Harmon. You've been too careful for that. But I want you to know that I'm watching. This vendetta of yours, whatever form it takes next, stays within the bounds of the law, or you'll find yourself sitting across from me under very different circumstances. I appreciate your candor, District Attorney Hayes. Russell stood. If there's nothing else. Just one thing. Hayes rose as well. Your daughter. Is she involved in any of this? The question caught Russell off guard. Melissa? No. She had no knowledge of the fraud. Good. Because if she had, I'd be obligated to pursue charges against her as well, regardless of her relationship to you. Hayes's expression softened slightly. Family complications aside, Mr. Harmon, I hope you find what you're looking for in all this. Revenge rarely brings the peace people hope for. So I've been told, Russell replied. But justice might. As Russell left the district attorney's office, his phone buzzed with a text from Pamela. Melissa arrived safely. She's devastated but resolute. Says she's filing for annulment, claiming fraud in the inducement. Smart girl, your daughter. For the first time in days, Russell felt something besides cold determination. Pride, perhaps, or the faintest glimmer of hope that something of his relationship with Melissa might be salvaged from this wreckage. His next stop was the offices of the newly formed Horizon Development LLC, where a team of architects, construction managers, and marketing professionals awaited his instructions. None knew his true identity. They had been hired through intermediaries and believed they were working for a consortium of European investors. Ladies and gentlemen, Russell addressed the assembled team. Thank you for joining this project on such short notice. Horizon Heights represents a unique opportunity, the chance to transform failure into success, to build something lasting where others promised but couldn't deliver. He outlined his vision for the development: luxury condominiums with cutting-edge amenities, environmentally sustainable features, and exclusive access to services that would make it truly unique in the Philadelphia market. Construction begins in 2 weeks, he concluded. I expect Horizon Heights to be the most talked-about development in the city by the end of the month. Not because of controversy, but because of excellence. As the meeting dispersed, Russell checked his messages again. A new email from Vincent contained links to news articles from around the world. Dominic Pierce, detained in Cayman Islands, fugitive architect, faces extradition to U.S. on fraud charges. Socialite Vanessa Harmon denied bail in investment scam case. The final phase was nearly complete. Just one piece remained: the formal announcement of Horizon Heights to the Philadelphia business community, scheduled for the following day. An announcement that would cement Russell's revenge by demonstrating that he was taking everything Dominic and Vanessa had dreamed of building and making it reality, without them. That evening, Russell received an unexpected visitor at his hotel suite. Martin Greenberg, Vanessa's attorney and a man Russell had known for decades, appeared haggard and desperate. She wants to talk to you, Martin said without preamble when Russell opened the door. Face to face. Why would I agree to that? Because despite everything, you were married for 26 years. Because she's facing serious jail time. Because, Martin hesitated. Because she says there are things you need to know about Melissa. That got Russell's attention. What things? She wouldn't tell me. Said it was for your ears only. Martin looked exhausted. Look, I know you orchestrated this whole thing. I can't prove it legally, but I know it. At least give her the chance to speak to you directly. Russell considered the request. There was little Vanessa could say that would change anything now, but the mention of Melissa was concerning. When? Tonight. I can arrange a private meeting room at the detention center. 3 hours later, Russell sat across from Vanessa in a small conference room at the Philadelphia Federal Detention Center. She wore an orange jumpsuit, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face stripped of makeup. Despite these indignities, she maintained the regal posture that had once made her the envy of Philadelphia society. You got what you wanted, she said, her voice hoarse. Are you satisfied now? Not quite, Russell replied honestly. Dominic is still fighting extradition. Bradley got off too lightly. But seeing you in that jumpsuit, yes, there's some satisfaction there. Vanessa laughed bitterly. You always were ruthless in business. I just never thought you'd turn that ruthlessness on your own family. Family. Russell's eyebrow raised. You ceased to be family when you betrayed our marriage. Melissa ceased to be family when she chose your lies over the truth. Is that what you think? That she chose me? Vanessa leaned forward. She chose to protect you, you fool. Russell frowned. What are you talking about? Why do you think she stayed close to me after the divorce? Why do you think she let me influence her? It wasn't because she believed my version of events. Vanessa's eyes gleamed with a mixture of bitterness and triumph. It was because I threatened to destroy you if she didn't. Destroy me? With what? Russell scoffed. You got everything you wanted in the divorce. Not everything. You kept your precious reputation. Your standing in the business community. Vanessa's voice dropped. But I had evidence that could have changed that. Documentation of certain irregularities in your early projects. Things that would have triggered federal investigations, bankrupted you, possibly even sent you to prison. Russell's blood ran cold. She was referring to his first major development, a project that had indeed involved cutting corners with building codes and bribing inspectors. It had been nearly 30 years ago, when he was desperate and struggling. He'd never repeated those mistakes, but the evidence existed. You're bluffing, he said, but without conviction. Am I? Ask Melissa about the red box in my closet. The one she helped me hide during the divorce proceedings. Vanessa smiled thinly. I told her exactly what was in it, and what would happen to you if she didn't play along. She agreed to everything. Keeping me close, distancing herself from you. Even the wedding seating, to protect you from exposure. The revelation staggered Russell. Could it be true? Had Melissa's apparent betrayal actually been a misguided attempt to protect him? Why tell me this now? He finally asked. Because it doesn't matter anymore. You've destroyed me anyway. Vanessa's smile faded. And because Melissa deserves to have at least one parent who knows she was loyal, even if it didn't look that way. Russell stood abruptly. This changes nothing about what you and Dominic did. The fraud, the lies, using my name. You still deserve everything that's happening to you. Perhaps we do, Vanessa acknowledged. But Melissa doesn't deserve your vindictiveness. She was protecting you, Russell. The only one who ever did. As Russell left the detention center, his mind raced with this new information. If Vanessa was telling the truth, and he wasn't convinced she was, it changed his understanding of Melissa's actions over the past 2 years. Not her judgment or her choices, but her motivations. He needed to verify Vanessa's claims. With a quick call to Vincent, he arranged for someone to search Vanessa's home for the red box she'd mentioned. If such evidence existed, Russell needed to know exactly what it contained. The announcement of Horizon Heights the next day proceeded as planned, with Russell watching via livestream from his hotel suite. The development was presented as a visionary project that will deliver what others only promised, a not-so-subtle dig at the Enclave's failure. Media coverage was extensive, with business reporters speculating about the mysterious European investors behind Horizon Development LLC. Some even suggested that Russell might be involved, given his expertise in similar projects. But without evidence, these remained mere rumors. As Russell watched the press conference unfold, his phone buzzed with a message from Vincent. Found the box. Contents as described by Vanessa. Documentation that could certainly have caused problems for you, especially in the political climate of recent years. What do you want done with it? Russell stared at the message for a long time before responding. Secure it. I'll deal with it personally. The final piece of his revenge was now in place. Dominic would be extradited and face prosecution. Vanessa would likely serve several years in federal prison. The Enclave investors would eventually receive some compensation through the legal system, but nowhere near what they'd lost. And Horizon Heights would rise as a monument to Russell's triumph. A development he would ultimately reveal himself to be behind, once its success was assured. Yet the victory felt hollow now, tainted by the revelation about Melissa. If Vanessa was telling the truth, and the existence of the red box suggested she might be, then Russell had misunderstood his daughter's actions entirely. What he'd seen as betrayal had been, in its own misguided way, an act of loyalty. That night, Russell made a decision. He booked a train ticket to New York for the following morning. It was time to talk to Melissa, time to hear her version of events directly. As he packed his suitcase, Russell reflected on the path that had led him here. He had achieved his revenge, destroyed those who had wronged him, reclaimed his position of power. But at what cost? And for what purpose? These were questions he hoped to answer in New York. With his daughter, if she would still speak to him at all. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The train to New York gave Russell valuable time to think. He sat alone in the first-class compartment, watching the urban sprawl of Philadelphia give way to the New Jersey countryside. In his briefcase was the red box Vincent had recovered from Vanessa's home. Unopened, its contents as yet unconfirmed. Russell had spent his life building things, buildings, businesses, a fortune. Along the way, he developed an instinct for structural integrity, for knowing when a foundation was sound and when it was compromised. The foundation of his relationship with Melissa had been damaged for years. Now he needed to determine if it could be repaired or if it was beyond salvation. His phone buzzed with a text from Pamela. She knows you're coming. She didn't run, but she's not exactly rolling out the welcome mat either. Tread carefully, Russell. He responded with a simple acknowledgement and returned to his thoughts. By the time the train pulled into Penn Station, Russell had formulated a plan of sorts, not the detailed, methodical strategy he'd employed against Vanessa and Dominic, but a more open-ended approach. He would listen first, judge later. If Melissa had indeed been protecting him all this time, he owed her that much. Pamela's Upper East Side apartment was in a pre-war building with a dignified doorman who announced Russell's arrival with formal courtesy. When the elevator doors opened on the 12th floor, Pamela was waiting in the hallway. She's inside, Pamela said, her expression guarded. Been pacing all morning since I told her you were coming. I'm going out for a few hours to give you privacy. Thank you for taking her in, Russell said. Whatever happens between us, I appreciate that. Pamela studied him. You've got that look, the one you used to get before closing a difficult deal. This isn't business, Russell. This is your daughter. I'm aware of that. Are you? Because the Russell Harmon who orchestrated the spectacular downfall of Vanessa and Dominic doesn't strike me as a man who remembers the difference. She sighed. Just remember she's hurting too. Everything she thought was real has crumbled, including her image of her father. Russell nodded, accepting the rebuke. I'll keep that in mind. Pamela left, and Russell knocked on the apartment door. Melissa opened it almost immediately, as if she'd been standing just on the other side. She looked smaller somehow, diminished without the trappings of her privileged life. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry, her posture defensive. Dad? She said, stepping back to let him enter. The apartment was elegant but comfortable, with wall-to-wall bookshelves and art that reflected Pamela's more intellectual tastes. Melissa led him to the living room, where 2 cups of tea sat waiting on the coffee table. Aunt Pamela thought we might need refreshments for this conversation, she explained, taking a seat on the sofa. Russell sat opposite her. Neither reached for the tea. Your mother told me about the red box, he said, deciding directness was the best approach. About how you agreed to her demands to protect me. Melissa's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of her surprise. And you believed her? I don't know what to believe anymore. Russell placed the unopened box on the coffee table between them. Vincent found this where she said it would be. I haven't looked inside yet. I wanted to hear from you first. Melissa stared at the box, her hands twisting in her lap. She shouldn't have told you. But it's true. Russell pressed. Yes. The words seemed to deflate her. After you moved out, before the divorce was finalized, she showed me what was in that box. Records from your Westridge development, the first major project you did. Proof that you bribed building inspectors, that you used substandard materials in some sections to cut costs. Russell's jaw tightened. And she threatened to expose this if you didn't stay close to her? Turn against me? Not exactly. Melissa finally met his eyes. She said she would only use it if you tried to take everything in the divorce. That as long as you gave her what she wanted, she'd keep it hidden. But to make sure you didn't change your mind later, I needed to maintain the relationship with her. Show you that I was on her side. And the wedding seating? Was that part of her manipulation too? Melissa looked away. No, that was Bradley's mother and Dominic. They convinced Mom it would be better to keep you at a distance. I didn't check the arrangements. I should have. Yes, you should have. Russell's voice hardened. Just as you should have come to me about Vanessa's blackmail instead of playing along with it for 2 years. Would you have listened? Melissa challenged, a flash of her old spirit returning. You've never admitted to cutting corners on Westridge, even though everyone in the industry knows you did. Would you have believed me if I told you Mom was threatening to expose your past? Or would you have dismissed it as more of her manipulations? The accusation struck home. Russell had indeed spent years denying the shortcuts he'd taken on the Westridge project, even to himself. It was a chapter of his past he preferred not to revisit. We'll never know, will we? Because you didn't give me the chance. Russell leaned forward. Instead, you let me believe my only child had abandoned me, that she chose the woman who betrayed our family over the man who built it. I was trying to protect you. Melissa's voice rose in frustration. Everything you built would have been destroyed if those documents became public. Your reputation, your contracts with the city, everything. So you sacrificed our relationship instead. Yes. Tears filled Melissa's eyes. And then you started this vendetta, this calculated destruction of Mom and Dominic and Bradley. Did you ever think about what that would do to me? Did you consider for one moment that I might be caught in the middle? I gave you a choice, Russell reminded her. Leave Bradley or face the consequences with him. That wasn't a choice. That was an ultimatum from a stranger wearing my father's face. Melissa wiped angrily at her tears. The father I knew built things. He didn't destroy people, no matter how much they hurt him. The father you knew was a fool who trusted the wrong people and paid the price for it. No. Melissa shook her head firmly. The father I knew was strong enough to walk away from betrayal without needing to salt the earth behind him. He taught me that success was the best revenge, not whatever this is. They fell into silence, the weight of years of misunderstandings and hidden truths pressing down between them. Russell studied his daughter, really looked at her for the first time in years. Behind the hurt and anger, He could see echoes of the determined child who had followed him around construction sites, asking endless questions about how buildings stayed standing, how concrete set, how steel beams could bear such enormous weight. "What do you want from me now?" Melissa finally asked. "You've won. You've destroyed them all. Are you here to gloat? To tell me I chose the wrong side?" "I'm here because I needed to know the truth." Russell gestured to the red box. "And because whatever's in there, whatever mistakes I made 30 years ago, I want you to know that I never needed protecting from them. Especially not at the cost of our relationship." "Then why didn't you fight harder for me after the divorce?" The question seemed to burst from Melissa involuntarily. "Why did you just accept that I was choosing her side? Why didn't you see through it?" The accusation caught Russell off guard. "I thought I was respecting your choice. I didn't want to make you feel torn between us." "I was already torn." Melissa stood abruptly, pacing the room. "Every day for 2 years, I've been torn. Pretending to believe Mom's version of events. Listening to Dominic's snide comments about you. Watching Bradley align himself with them because it was good for his career." She stopped, facing Russell with raw emotion. "And all the while, I was waiting for you to see through it. To know me well enough to realize something wasn't right. But you never did." The truth of her words struck Russell like a physical blow. He had been so focused on his own pain, his own sense of betrayal, that he'd failed to look deeper. Failed to trust the bond that had once existed between them. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. The words felt foreign on his tongue. Russell Harmon rarely apologized for anything. "I should have seen it. Should have known you better than that." Melissa seemed as surprised by the apology as Russell was to offer it. She sat down again, closer this time. "I made mistakes too. I should have found a way to tell you. Should have trusted that we could face whatever came, together." Russell opened the red box, finally examining its contents. The documents inside were exactly as Vanessa and Melissa had described. Evidence of the corners he'd cut on the Westridge project, the bribes he'd paid, the substandard materials he'd used in non-essential areas. Evidence that could indeed have triggered investigations, lawsuits, possibly even criminal charges, especially if presented in the most damaging light. "She really had me," he acknowledged, flipping through the pages. "These records shouldn't even exist anymore. I thought all copies were destroyed years ago." "Are they that bad?" Melissa asked, peering at the documents. "Bad enough." Russell closed the box. "The statute of limitations has passed on most of it, but the reputational damage would have been severe. Contracts canceled, partnerships dissolved, stock value plummeting." He shook his head. Vanessa knew exactly what she had. "What will you do with it now?" Russell considered the question. "Destroy it, I suppose. The threat is neutralized with Vanessa in custody and facing years in prison." "And what about me?" Melissa asked quietly. "Where do I fit in your new reality? Now that you've crushed everyone who hurt you?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with the pain of the past and the uncertainty of the future. Russell thought carefully before responding. "That depends on you. On whether you want a relationship with me after everything that's happened." "I'm not the same person I was before all this," Melissa warned. "I can't just pretend the last few weeks didn't happen." "What you did to them." "What they did to themselves," Russell corrected. "I merely exposed the truth. In the most destructive way possible." Melissa's voice hardened. "You could have reported them to the authorities. Instead, you orchestrated a public humiliation that took down everyone in their orbit, including investors who trusted them." "The investors were warned. Those who listened pulled out in time. But that wasn't your primary concern, was it? This wasn't about justice for the investors. It was about revenge." Melissa held his gaze steadily. "I need to know if that's who you really are. The man who plans for months to destroy his enemies, who takes satisfaction in their downfall. Because if it is, I'm not sure we can rebuild." The challenge was clear. Russell could defend his actions, justify the devastating revenge he'd enacted. Or he could acknowledge the darker truth, that in his pursuit of justice, he had perhaps become something he never intended to be. "I won't apologize for holding them accountable," he said finally. "What they did was criminal, and they deserve consequences." But he hesitated, the admission difficult for a man unaccustomed to self-doubt. The scale of it, the public nature of their downfall. Yes, that was about revenge. About making them feel as humiliated as I did at your wedding. And was it worth it? Melissa asked. "Do you feel better now?" "Not entirely." Russell's honesty surprised them both. There's satisfaction in seeing justice done, but it's not the clean resolution I expected. And knowing now what you were trying to do, what Vanessa manipulated you into, it complicates things. Life is complicated, Dad. People are complicated. Melissa's expression softened slightly. That's something Mom never understood about you. She saw your strength as simplicity, the driven businessman who always knew what he wanted and how to get it. But I always knew there was more beneath the surface. Until these past few weeks, when you seemed to become exactly what she always claimed you were. And what was that? Cold, calculating, ruthless. Melissa hesitated, capable of destroying anyone who stood in your way without a second thought. The description was a mirror Russell didn't entirely recognize himself in, or perhaps didn't want to recognize himself in. Had his pursuit of justice transformed him into something else? Or had this capacity for ruthlessness always been there, waiting for the right provocation? I don't want that to be all I am, he admitted. Especially not to you. The vulnerability in his voice seemed to reach Melissa in a way his earlier words hadn't. She moved to sit beside him on the sofa, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Then don't let it be, she said simply. You've had your revenge. They've paid for what they did. Isn't it time to go back to building things instead of tearing them down? Russell considered her words. The plan for Horizon Heights, the development that would rise where the Enclave had failed, had been conceived as the final twist of the knife, a permanent reminder of his triumph over Dominic and Vanessa. But it could be something else, something better. Horizon Heights, he said slowly. The development I'm building where the Enclave was supposed to be. It could be more than just the final act of this revenge. It could be something meaningful, something that helps the people Dominic and Vanessa hurt. What do you mean? The investors who lost money in the Enclave scheme. What if I restructured Horizon Heights to give them priority ownership stakes? Used my resources to make them whole in a way the legal system never will. The idea took shape as he spoke, a chance for redemption rather than further destruction. Melissa studied him, cautious hope in her eyes. You do that? Give up the satisfaction of the final victory lap to help the victims instead? I would. Russell realized he meant it. Not just for us, though that's part of it, but because it's the right thing to do. Because building something positive from this mess is better than just salting the earth and walking away. The father I remember would make that choice, Melissa said quietly. He understood that true strength isn't about how thoroughly you can destroy your enemies. It's about what you choose to build in the aftermath. For the first time in weeks, perhaps months, Russell felt something uncoil within him. The cold, hard knot of rage and betrayal that had driven his every action since the wedding began to loosen, making room for something else. Not forgiveness, exactly. Vanessa and Dominic had betrayed him too completely for that. But perhaps perspective. The understanding that his response to their betrayal didn't have to define him going forward. I can't promise you I'll ever be the man you remember, Russell said honestly. But I can try to be someone better than the man who orchestrated all this destruction. Someone you can be proud to call your father again. Melissa didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was steady, adult in a way that reminded Russell that his little girl had grown into a woman with her own strength. I can't promise I'll ever fully understand or approve of what you did to them. But I can try to remember the father who taught me that integrity matters, that your word is your bond, that how you treat people defines you more than what you achieve. She held his gaze. If that man is still in there, I'd like to get to know him again. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. It wasn't an erasure of the pain they'd both caused and experienced. But it was a beginning, a foundation upon which something new might be built. I'd like that too, Russell said. Together, they turned to face whatever came next, neither of them unchanged by what had happened, but perhaps, in time, stronger for having weathered it. Chapter 8. The Reconstruction. 6 months passed, marked by the changing seasons and the gradual transformation of both the Philadelphia skyline and the relationship between Russell and Melissa. Horizon Heights had broken ground with a modest ceremony that drew little media attention, exactly as Russell had intended. The project had been restructured as he'd promised, with former Enclave investors given priority shares based on what they'd lost, essentially making them whole through legitimate ownership in a real development. Russell had remained in New York, taking an extended leave from the day-to-day operations of Harmon Development to focus on rebuilding his relationship with his daughter. They met for dinner twice weekly, Each conversation a careful navigation of the past and a tentative exploration of a possible future. Today they sat in Pamela's sunlit kitchen, sharing a late breakfast. Melissa had moved into her own apartment in Brooklyn the previous month, but still visited her aunt regularly. Russell had taken a suite at the Pierre, unwilling to commit to a more permanent residence until he decided whether New York would be his home going forward. The prosecutors offered Mom a plea deal, Melissa said, stirring her coffee. 5 years, eligible for parole in 3. White-collar prison in Connecticut. Russell nodded, unsurprised. Will she take it? Her lawyer says she should. The alternative is a trial where she could get 15 years. Melissa looked up from her coffee. They've frozen all her assets, including the house. She'll have nothing when she gets out. She'll have you, Russell pointed out. Assuming you choose to maintain a relationship with her. I don't know yet. Melissa's honesty was refreshing, one of the new aspects of their rebuilding relationship. Part of me feels obligated, since she is my mother. But after everything, I need time to figure out what that relationship looks like. You don't owe her anything, Russell said carefully. Not after how she manipulated you. But whatever you decide, I'll support your choice. Melissa smiled faintly. That's new. The old Russell Harmon would have had a very definite opinion about whether I should speak to Vanessa ever again. The old Russell Harmon didn't listen enough, he acknowledged. I'm trying to change that. Their conversation was interrupted by Russell's phone ringing. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. I should take this, Russell said, standing. It might be news about Dominic. Melissa nodded. The fugitive architect had eluded authorities for months, despite the international manhunt. Russell stepped onto Pamela's balcony to take the call. They found him, Vincent said without preamble. Costa Rica, living under an assumed name in a coastal village. Local police picked him up an hour ago. Extradition. Already in process. He'll be back on U.S. soil within 48 hours, according to my contact at the State Department. Good. Russell felt an echo of his former satisfaction, but muted now. Keep me updated. When he returned to the kitchen, Melissa was clearing the breakfast dishes. Dominic? She asked, reading his expression. Yes. They found him in Costa Rica. He's being extradited. Melissa absorbed this information. How do you feel about that? The question was typical of their new dynamic. Melissa gently pushing Russell to examine his emotions rather than simply his strategic position. It still felt strange to him, this focus on feelings over facts, but he was learning. Relieved, I suppose. Not because I need further revenge, but because he needs to face consequences for what he did. To the investors, to your mother, to you, to me. Melissa looked surprised. I was hardly an innocent victim, Dad. I knew something wasn't right with the enclave. I just chose not to look too closely. Because you were trying to protect me. Russell had come to accept this truth over the past months, though it still stung that his daughter had felt such protection necessary. Dominic took advantage of that, used your loyalty against you. Maybe, Melissa shrugged. Or maybe I was just a coward, afraid of losing the life I thought I wanted. Either way, I made my choices. Now I have to live with them. Russell studied his daughter, seeing in her the same resilience that had helped him build his empire from nothing. We all make choices, Melissa. The question is what we learn from them. Very philosophical, she teased, a glimpse of their old rapport returning. Next you'll be telling me that failure is just opportunity in disguise. Well, it can be. Russell gestured to the folder on the table. Plans for a small development Melissa was considering investing in with a modest trust fund she'd maintained separate from Bradley's finances. That project you're looking at? The developer made 3 failed attempts before creating something viable. Each failure taught him something. Melissa picked up the folder, turning it thoughtfully in her hands. Is that why you're helping me with this? Teaching me from your failures. I'm helping because you asked, Russell said simply. Because despite everything, you're still my daughter. And because maybe, through you, I can build something better than what I built for myself. It was as close to sentimentality as Russell ever came. Melissa seemed to understand the significance, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand briefly. Thank you, she said, for giving me another chance. Not everyone gets that. The words hung between them, loaded with the unspoken reality of what had happened to Vanessa, Dominic, and Bradley. Russell had indeed given Melissa another chance, a chance he had refused to extend to anyone else who had betrayed him. Speaking of chances, Russell said, changing the subject, Theodore called yesterday about Horizon Heights. The first phase of construction is ahead of schedule. If things continue this way, we'll be ready for occupancy 6 months earlier than projected. That's good news for the investors, Melissa acknowledged. Will you attend the completion ceremony when it happens? Russell shook his head. I prefer to remain the silent partner. This isn't about me taking credit. It's about making things right for the people who were defrauded. The Russell Harmon I knew 2 years ago would have wanted his name on the building in gold letters, Melissa observed. Perhaps, but as you've pointed out, I'm not entirely the same man I was. Russell straightened his tie, a habit from decades of business meetings. Besides, there are other projects requiring my attention. Not all of them involve construction. A shadow crossed Melissa's face. Dominic's legal troubles, you mean? Among other things. Russell's tone was neutral, but his eyes held a coldness that Melissa had come to recognize. It was the look that appeared whenever Dominic, Vanessa, or Bradley were mentioned. The reminder that beneath his evolving relationship with his daughter, Russell Harmon remained a man who neither forgot nor forgave betrayal. Dad? Melissa began hesitantly. Whatever you're planning for Dominic now that they've found him. Justice, Melissa. Nothing more, nothing less. Your version of justice can be terrifying, she pointed out. They've lost everything already. Their reputations, their freedom, their money. Isn't that enough? Russell considered her question with genuine thoughtfulness. Would you consider it enough if someone stole 6 years of your life through deception? If they used you as a pawn in their schemes, discarded you when convenient, and never showed a moment's remorse? I'm not defending what they did, Melissa clarified. I'm concerned about what continuing this vendetta might do to you. To us. The concern touched Russell, though he didn't show it. I appreciate that. But some things need to be seen through to their conclusion. Melissa recognized the finality in his tone. Whatever Russell had planned for Dominic Pierce, he would not be dissuaded. She could only hope that once it was done, once all accounts were settled in Russell's ledger, there might truly be room for something new to grow between them. I need to get going, she said, glancing at her watch. I have a job interview at 2. Russell nodded, approving. After the collapse of the Enclave and her separation from Bradley, Melissa had decided to return to work, applying for positions in real estate development where her business degree and personal experience might be valuable. Which firm? He asked. Westlake Partners. They're small but growing. She gave him a pointed look. And before you ask, no, I didn't use the Harmon name to get the interview. I want to do this on my own merits. I wasn't going to suggest otherwise, Russell assured her. Though if you need a reference. I don't, she said firmly. This is something I need to build for myself. Russell nodded, unexpected pride welling within him. Perhaps he had done something right in raising her after all. After Melissa left, Russell returned to Pamela's balcony, making a series of calls to set in motion the final phase of his plan for Dominic Pierce. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and Russell had been keeping this particular dish on ice for precisely the right moment. Chapter 9. The Judgment. 1 year to the day after Melissa's wedding, Russell stood at the window of his newly purchased Manhattan penthouse, surveying the city that had become his home. New York suited him. Its pace, its directness, its constant reinvention mirroring his own evolution over the past year. Horizon Heights had been completed ahead of schedule and under budget, a testament to Russell's expertise and determination. The former Enclave investors who had accepted his offer of compensatory ownership stakes were now seeing significant returns on their rescued investments. The development had won awards for innovation and sustainability, features that had been Dominic's empty promises but Russell's actual achievements. In Philadelphia, Russell remained a controversial figure. Some admired his exposure of the Enclave fraud and his subsequent efforts to make victims whole. Others whispered about the ruthless precision with which he had destroyed his enemies. Russell was indifferent to both perspectives. He had never sought approval, only results. His phone rang. Vincent, right on schedule. It's done, Vincent reported. Dominic's sentencing was this morning. 20 years, eligible for parole in 12. The judge made an example of him, cited the extraordinary breach of trust and the number of victims. Location? Russell inquired, his voice betraying nothing of the satisfaction he felt. USP Lewisburg. Maximum security. Russell allowed himself a thin smile. Lewisburg wasn't just any federal prison. It was known for housing the most dangerous offenders, a far cry from the minimum security, club-fed facilities where white-collar criminals typically serve their time. The designation wasn't accidental. Russell had used his considerable influence to ensure Dominic would face the harshest possible environment. And the other matter? Russell asked. Handled as instructed. The information about Dominic's previous frauds in Europe was provided to the prison population through appropriate channels. His reputation precedes him. Vincent paused. Are you sure about this, Russell? It's one thing to ensure he serves hard time, but setting him up as a target inside. I'm sure, Russell cut him off. Dominic made his choices. So have I. After ending the call, Russell opened his laptop to review the quarterly report for Harmon Development. The company had not only recovered from any reputational damage associated with the Enclave scandal, but had emerged stronger, with new projects across the eastern seaboard generating record profits. A knock at the door interrupted his review. Russell checked his watch, right on time. Melissa entered, dressed in professional attire that reflected her new position as Junior Development Manager at Westlake Partners. The firm had hired her 3 months ago, and she had already distinguished herself through hard work and an instinctive understanding of real estate development that mirrored her father's. You heard about Dominic's sentencing? She asked without preamble, setting her briefcase down. Vincent called, Russell confirmed. 20 years at Lewisburg. Melissa studied her father's impassive expression. That wasn't just the justice system at work, was it? Russell neither confirmed nor denied. The courts determined the appropriate punishment for his crimes. With some assistance, Melissa pressed. I may not be in your inner circle, Dad, but I'm not naive. Dominic should have gone to a minimum security facility. Financial criminals don't get sent to places like Lewisburg unless someone pulls strings. Does it matter? Russell countered. He defrauded hundreds of people out of millions of dollars. He manipulated you, used my name without permission, and showed no remorse when caught. Should he serve his time in comfort? Melissa sat across from him, her posture echoing his own straight-backed dignity. What matters is that you're still pulling strings, still orchestrating consequences from behind the scenes. A year later, and the revenge continues. Not revenge, Russell corrected. Justice, administered thoroughly and without compromise. There's a fine line between justice and vengeance, Dad. Only for those who lack conviction. Russell's tone was final. I told you from the beginning who I am, Melissa. I never claimed to be a man who forgives betrayal. Melissa absorbed this, her expression thoughtful rather than judgmental. Over the past year, she had come to accept, if not entirely approve of, her father's implacable nature. The same unyielding determination that made him dangerous to his enemies had also built an empire, provided security for thousands of employees, and ultimately protected her when she needed it most. What about Mom? She asked. Her sentencing is next month. I've made no efforts to influence the outcome of Vanessa's case, one way or the other, Russell assured her. Whatever the court decides is appropriate. Melissa looked skeptical. Really? No strings pulled? No whispered suggestions to prosecutors? None, Russell confirmed. Not because I've forgiven her, but because her fate is of no further interest to me. Vanessa is part of my past, not my future. The distinction was important to Russell. Dominic had required special attention because he had been the architect of the betrayal, the man who had seduced Vanessa and created the fraudulent scheme that had ensnared so many, including Melissa. Vanessa, while culpable, had been more pawn than mastermind in Russell's assessment. Her punishment would come naturally through the legal system and the loss of the social status she had prized so highly. As for Bradley, he had accepted a plea deal that included testimony against Dominic and Vanessa in exchange for 5 years probation and a lifetime ban from the financial industry. He had lost his family's respect, his career prospects, and his wife. Russell considered the matter settled. Speaking of futures, Russell said, changing the subject, I've been reviewing your proposal for the Brooklyn waterfront project. It has potential. Melissa looked surprised. You read it? I only sent it to you yesterday. Of course I read it. It's good work, innovative but practical. The mixed-use approach addressing both affordable housing and commercial needs shows real understanding of urban development challenges. But, Melissa prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation. But the financing structure needs refinement. The debt-to-equity ratio you've proposed would leave you vulnerable to market fluctuations. Russell pulled up the document on his laptop, turning the screen to show her his annotations. These adjustments would provide more stability while still allowing for the growth you're projecting. Melissa reviewed his suggestions, her quick mind processing the implications. This actually improves the potential ROI without increasing risk. That's impressive. Basic financial engineering, Russell dismissed. Something you'll master with experience. Is that an offer to teach me? Melissa asked, a hint of hope in her voice. Russell considered the question carefully. Their relationship over the past year had evolved from cautious reconciliation to something approaching genuine connection. They had established boundaries, learned to respect each other's independence, and begun to rebuild trust. But Russell had deliberately avoided inserting himself into Melissa's professional development, wanting her to establish her own identity separate from his shadow. If you want it to be, he said finally, not as boss and employee, you're building your own career at Westlake, as you should, but perhaps as consultant and developer, colleague to colleague. The offer represented more than professional guidance. It was Russell's way of acknowledging that Melissa had earned his respect, not just as his daughter, but as a capable professional in her own right. I'd like that, Melissa said, genuine warmth in her smile. Colleague to colleague. As they reviewed the proposal together, Russell felt an unfamiliar sense of contentment. Not the fiery satisfaction of revenge accomplished, nor the cold comfort of enemies vanquished, but something steadier and more sustainable. He was building again, not just buildings or businesses, but a relationship with his daughter built on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than obligation or manipulation. Later that evening, after Melissa had left, Russell received one final call from Vincent. Dominic's first day at Lewisburg went exactly as anticipated, Vincent reported. The information we provided found its way to the right people. He's been placed in protective custody already after an incident in the yard. Serious? Russell inquired. Serious enough to send a message, not serious enough to prompt an investigation beyond the prison walls. Good. Keep me informed of any significant developments. After ending the call, Russell poured himself a glass of scotch and returned to the window. In the reflection of the glass, he could see the man he had become. Older, certainly, but wiser too in ways that went beyond business acumen or financial strategy. The past year had taught him the true cost of betrayal, both to those who committed it and to those who avenged it. He had emerged victorious, as he always did. Dominic would spend decades in a facility where his refined tastes and architectural expertise meant nothing. Vanessa would soon join the ranks of disgraced socialites, her carefully cultivated image shattered beyond repair. Bradley would spend the rest of his life trying to outrun his involvement in the Enclave, his prestigious family name now associated with fraud rather than old money respectability. And Russell? He had not only survived their betrayal, but had transformed it into opportunity. Horizon Heights stood as a monument to his resilience. Harmon Development was thriving, and his relationship with Melissa, while still healing, showed promise he had not dared hope for a year ago. The wedding that had been meant to humiliate him, his name on a folding chair tucked behind the band, had instead been the catalyst for a reckoning long overdue. The +1 had become the last one standing. Russell lifted his glass in a silent toast to his reflection. He had never been a man who forgave betrayal, and he never would be. That knowledge sat comfortably within him now, neither a source of shame nor pride, simply a truth as fundamental to his nature as steel was to the skyscrapers he built. Some men might find peace in forgiveness. Russell Harmon found his injustice, cold, complete, and delivered without compromise. As the lights of Manhattan glittered below, Russell turned away from the window and toward his desk, where plans for a new development awaited his attention. The past was settled. The future, as always, would be built one decision at a time. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.